I've always been a little fascinated with astrology, but I've never really been open to it in the way that, like, it really is so much more powerful than I think I even imagined. So, Wendy, I'd love for you to start off by just telling people how you came into the world of astrology and a little bit of your background.
Well, you know, the into astrology part was very much a fluke. I was in my 40s. I was an interior designer, and I was in Encinitas, California, doing a street fair, a design street fair with a designer friend of mine, and we decided to take a walk down some of the local curio shops, and I walked into this shop, and this lady, dark-headed, haired lady, walked up to me, kind of a little strange looking, and said, "Would you like an astrology reading?" And I blinked a little, and I paused, and I said, "No, I want a teacher." And it literally was that fast. It was just something I'd never given any thought to. And she said, "Well, you're in luck. My next class starts next week."
No way.
Yep, that's how it started. And so both my husband and I went to that class, and we studied with her for 5 years. And she was, at the time, the president of the San Diego Astrological Society. She'd been in the business for like 17 years when we met her. And we studied astrology from her for 5 years, and we studied tarot from her for a year. So the first year we had an hour astrology and then an hour tarot lesson, and then after that we just continued on with the astrology. And then after that we studied with a very technical astrologer for 3.5 years. So I have, you know, the equivalent of 8.5 years, master's degree or whatever, in astrology. And it's one of the most powerful and insightful and helpful systems of learning about yourself than anything else there is. However, I qualify that by saying you've got to have somebody who is an astrologer, who is dedicated and very learned and who understands the ins and outs of it. There are a lot of people out there that, ooh, you know, I studied online for a year and now I know everything. Wrong. Doesn't happen like that. And in fact, I know a lot that can truly help people with their lives, but you could never learn it all in a lifetime. It is so vast, so immense. It's just layer after layer after layer. And to really become a good astrologer, you have to be dedicated to learning as much as you can learn to help people. A little bit of knowledge, you're dangerous because you don't know what you're talking about. And so anyway, that's my that's my claim to how it started. One of the questions, if you don't mind me referencing that.
Right. I was just going to bring this up, so I'm glad you're tackling
Yeah, and she says, how did she put it? How would I know if I'm spiritual, or, you know, let's see. How did I know? There we go. It's I feel like I'm a spiritual person and I'm in tune with certain things. How and when did you know you had a spiritual gift? Well, I didn't. I literally didn't. And when those words came out of my mouth, I want a teacher. I had always liked astrology, but I never, you know, dealt with it at all, other than that's how it started. And that's an interesting thing that I work with my clients on, because so many people say, well, how do I know if I'm going in the right direction? You know, how do I know if I'm on the right path and whatever? If it's something that brings you joy, you're on the right path.
I love that.
Something that makes you happy. You came to this life to be happy. And if it doesn't make you happy, then you're on the wrong path. You see?
I love that.
So, but
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
This is what I want to ask you. For those people who are watching who are a little bit leery and a little hesitant and a little reserved, like, what isn't astrology? You know, like, what is, for those that think it's hokey, what do you have to say to that?
Well, first of all, astrology is many thousands of years old. It's not anything fly by night. The stars and their effect on the human mind and everything else human has been studied for eons of time, which is very important. That's a significant element to trust. Okay, I mean, in the 14th, 15th centuries, you know, the ruling class had their own court astrologers because they knew through the study of that they would be able to gain information that would give them an advantage. You know, if the astrologer wasn't right, you know, the astrologer would lose their head. So this is something that's been used for so many centuries, which is important for me too. I need to know that it's tried and true. And it is. And it's powerful. And just with a cursory glance of someone's natal chart, I can see so much about that person and why they are who they are. And that's why I love it, because we all, for some reason, grow up feeling like something's wrong with us. We're so different. You know, why don't we fit in? Why aren't we like other people? Well, astrology is such an elegantly designed system to make us all unique. And once you know what your natal imprint is and you know about your gifts and challenges, then you can kind of take a sigh of relief and go, oh, I came here in this life to learn X, Y, Z. Okay. All right. I get it. You see what I mean?
Right. And so tell everyone the process of reading their natal chart, what that entails and what will be discovered through that.
Okay. Well, your natal imprint is calculated by the time of your birth, which is one reason that having an accurate birth time is very, very important for accuracy in the profile and in the readings. And what that imprint tells me and tells you is where your gifts are. I mean, what did you come here to learn, to master? What are your challenges? And why do you keep pursuing things that cause problems and you keep repeating the patterns? You know, it shows you all about that and then gives you paths and remedy to do better and to be better. So the natal imprint is huge. It even talks about your childhood. It talks about your parents. It shows all kinds of things. And one person asked about health. It talks about health as well. And then in another aspect of it, once you get that natal profile in your mind and you recognize who you are and why you have these issues, then you can go on to discovering how the planets are lined up for you today. How are they impacting you? You know, why are you feeling depressed or out of sorts? You know, it can pinpoint all of that. And then there's another tool that we use called solar returns. And those solar returns can tell a person what's coming toward them. It's like a predictive tool. Where are the energies going to be that are going to be the most powerful in the next 2 or 3 years? And those are based on latitude and longitude. Now, people say, oh, come on, that's woo-woo stuff. No, no, no. Astrology is science and math. And it's thousands and thousands and thousands of years of empirical data. It's not something that anybody fly-by-night made up. It's way too vast. It's way too intricately designed for it to be some fly-by-night person that created it. And actually, those astrologers that write in the newspapers and magazines under sun sign astrology are giving the whole career of astrology a bad name. It's like some of the people who wrote questions today said, well, I really don't fit a particular sign. Why do I feel more like another sign than I do me? And that's where sun sign astrology is just hokey. There's no way you can pigeonhole a person by a sign because there are 11 points that we look at. Okay? 10 planets and then the rising sign. And so you can be a combination of a whole bunch of different things that totally mitigate your sun sign and make you a completely different person than what's, in the newspaper. So getting it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah. And let me give you an example. I had a client contact me, a woman, and she said, it's so frustrating for me. I'm an Aries, but I don't feel like an Aries, and I don't understand why none of that fits me. Well, so I pulled up her chart, and it was just so immediately clear. And she'd had readings from other astrologers, too, who couldn't figure it out. But it was immediately clear to me. Her Aries sun was in the 12th house of Pisces, which is a water sign. So the water put out the Aries fire. And it made her very much more water-like. And when I told her that, she was like, it's like this huge sigh of relief. Oh my God, that's right. I feel so much more like a Pisces than I do an Aries. So there are technical things that can...
So cool.
I know. Isn't that interesting? So the house that your sun sign resides in colors the action of that sun. And so a person who maybe is a Pisces, okay, and their sun sign is in Leo, in the house of Leo, they're confused. Either the sun is boiling the water, or the water is putting out the fire. With water and fire, that's what you get. And sometimes you bounce back and forth, and people get confused because it's like they got a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. And I can explain all of that to people and let them know why they're experiencing that
so
duality.
Funny, Wendy. So Jessica Roller just made a comment and said, I need a handbook for this. And it's so funny because it would take you, like my Aunt Wendy, this has been her life's work, and that's why she says these things, and it makes so much sense to her. You don't need a handbook, you just need my Aunt Wendy. You just need Aunt Wendy. You can all call her. She can be Aunt Wendy to you guys too.
Well, the issue is...
I will say this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, with each reading, a person gets a recording. And the first reading that I give, which is the initial, life reading, is a 90-minute reading. And you get a recording of that. And you can listen to it over and over and over for years. I have clients that say, I just decided to pull it out again, and I heard something that I had never heard before, and I've listened to it 10 times. So,
Wendy, it's unbelievable because I have been doing that. And that first natal reading I got with you, it blows my mind how accurate it describes me and my life and the cycles I've gone through. And I don't know if you remember, you did one for me and a guy that I was dating at the time, and it was like, he will leave your life just as quickly as he came into your life. And I remember thinking, that's bullshit, I'm going to marry him. And sure enough, he was out of my life so fast, and it was so interesting. I have referenced that reading throughout my life, and that's why I want my money talks folks to be more familiar with the power of astrology. So I want to start, we're going to dive into these questions that these women have submitted, but I want you to please begin by explaining what the hell is going on in the universe right now. It seems so chaotic. I'm convinced that ever since the eclipse happened, there has been nothing but mass chaos. All of the natural disasters, the mass shootings. Can you give us any sort of understanding of what's going on in the universe?
I can. And I've been writing about this, and I have an article on it in my blog, wendycicchetti.com, and it's called Global Chaos. And this started, actually things started back in 2008 when Pluto moved into the sign of Capricorn, and that's when all of the monetary stuff started to fall apart. And that's what Pluto does whenever it enters a sign. It's the death of the old and the birth of the new, and all the structures that no longer serve us are eliminated, basically, and we have to create new ways of doing things. So we went through that shift in money and big business and big government where everything was falling apart. So many people lost their homes, and all of that was because Pluto entered Capricorn. Now, then in 2011, Pluto went into what we call a square which is mathematical, 90 degrees, to the sign of Uranus. And we've had this dance between Pluto and Uranus for a long, long time. And what Uranus does is it comes in like a jackhammer and breaks up the cement of Plutonian things. And so Uranus is like quick and sudden changes. It's like throwing in a monkey wrench to things that you don't even see. And so all of this has been building up since 2011, so for the last eight years or so. And it's not quite done. It's still in orb. But that's what's creating this chaotic energy that makes everybody crazy, and all kinds of stuff that you don't expect just comes out of the blue. Now, the last time this happened, when Pluto was in aspect to Uranus, was the 1960s, when we had all the race riots and all of that stuff. Now, a lot of the younger people aren't as aware of it as I was, because when that started, I was just 10 years old. But I remember on the TV, all of the news about, the chaos, and it's global. It's not just in this country. But back then, we didn't have the ability to see what was going on all across the world. But it was happening globally, just like it is now, globally. And then the time before that it happened was when we had the huge financial collapse in the 1920s. Just prior to World War II, that led up to World War II. So we know through historical data, and we can only, and I can only talk about what you people can put a framework around. We have historical data centuries and centuries ago what happened, but so we have three things that you can historically reference of the Great Depression, and then the 60s and the chaos there, and now this huge chaotic situation that we're in now. And I don't know how long it's going to take to resolve. I know
that was my next question.
Yeah.
What is this madness?
Pluto is in the sign of Capricorn until 2024. And then after that, it goes into Aquarius, which is good, because what that means is, because Aquarius is all about good ideas, futuristic stuff. And that's when all of the old structures are going to have collapsed, and we're going to start coming up with really good ideas and new structures that are sustainable, that will help everybody. Okay? So that's why we are experiencing the global chaos that we have been, and it's not over. And even though Uranus and Pluto, the orb of their influence together, an exact square would be 90 degrees, but it could be 8 degrees before that and 8 degrees after that they're in influence of each other, and then there are retrograde cycles and that kind of stuff, and that's why it takes so long. But what I need everybody to understand is that astrological cycles like this are not arbitrary. They're designed to help us evolve. And if we don't eliminate those things in the world that are bad for humanity, then, we're going to destroy ourselves and the planet. So these situations come that wake people up. So we go, oh, wow, there's something more to this, and we've got to come up with better solutions to all of these chaotic problems that are killing people, basically.
That's really fascinating to hear, because it does feel like that's what's going on. It's like this awakening. Like people are waking up to the insanity of what we've been living, and it is kind of catapulting people into making, even just on personal levels, the whole country seems to be falling apart, but a lot of my friends are going through personal, really crazy shifts where things are kind of pushing them into making decisions that are really hard, but that are in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and short-term decisions sometimes might be necessary, but we really need to look down the road, particularly on a country and global level. We've got to look down the road, and not just on short-term profits, but on long-term sustainability. And that's what this is all about. We don't change unless there's pain. That's the nature of being a human. It's the pain and the discomfort that gets us to make better decisions so we don't repeat the same patterns all the time. And that's on a global level as well as on a personal level. So everything we experience on that personal level, we're experiencing on a global level.
Interesting.
Now,
Tammy has a question. She said, where does that put Pisces? And I'm not quite sure what she's referencing. Do you know what she might reference? Where does that put Pisces?
Now, say that again. What was the question?
Well, the question is, where does that put Pisces? And I'm not quite sure what she's referencing. Do you know?
In terms of the global shifts?
I think that's what she means.
Well, Pisces is very spiritually connected. The water signs are Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio are the three signs that are most deeply connected to the other realms. Pisces is extremely sensitive and picks up on these crazy energies probably faster than just about anyone else. And Pisces and the reason why Pisces is the sign of addiction is because they feel things so acutely, they want to escape from it. And so they turn to alcohol and drugs to escape from the intensity of the pain that they feel. So, a Pisces is like water, like the ocean. It's in and out, back and forth. And you've got to create a functioning or a structured focus so that you have something that brings you joy other than escapism.
I love that. Well, and that's something that you can dive into deeper if they do a reading with you, which I highly, highly, highly suggest everyone who is able to do it. So, okay, I want to dive into some of these questions because there's some good ones. You kind of addressed this. You kind of already addressed this, but just briefly, is it normal to see more of yourself in a neighboring sign?
Yes. Let me tell you something that's important to understand. There's so much more than the sun sign. Now, a person could say, be a Libra, like you, and then their Mercury is, say, in Scorpio. Now, Mercury in a person's chart is how they think, how they learn, and how they communicate. So if you are a Libra, but you think like a Scorpio, what are you going to put out there?
Yeah.
What will your thoughts manifest if you're thinking like a Scorpio instead of thinking like a Libra, and vice versa? Okay. And so a Scorpio could have a Libra Mercury, which it would be a really good mitigator for a Scorpio, because then Libra always takes other people into consideration where Scorpios do not. So, there are all kinds of mitigators. And plus, a person may have a very strong moon sign and maybe 3 or 4 planets in another sign that completely overpower their sun sign. You see?
And these are all things that you can find out just by knowing the time that they were born, right?
Right, the date, time, and place. Accurate.
Date, time, and place.
Accurate date, time, and place, yeah.
Okay, so you guys can all figure this all out. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people that makes sense. Okay, cool, that makes sense. Okay, so this is a question. How do you know if you're spiritual?
That's sometimes a really hard thing. If you're a Pisces or a Scorpio or a Cancer, you know you're spiritual because you're so deeply connected to the other realm. Sometimes you have to shut it off. It gets so strong. But the other signs, like me, because I'm a Taurus and Virgo, I had to learn to be, okay? And I am able now to get information into intuition and some psychic information, but it's taken me a long time to hone that skill. Okay, it's a skill or it's a natural talent. And it's like playing the piano or whatever else. If you want to do it bad enough and you keep practicing, a good place to start would be maybe take a class in tarot and learn to read that. And then you can start feeling like you're getting some intuition as you're working with the cards. That's a good place to start for a lot of people. Why I chose astrology, I don't know, but it turned out to be both at the same time.
That's good advice. Okay, what advice would you give someone who struggles to identify their sign because of stereotypes? Okay, wait, I think we've covered this, but...
Well, I get that person may be a highly mitigated Capricorn, where the Capricorn ideals of structure and work and duty don't resonate well. And again, it would take a reading to be able to identify what was really going on and what that person's real gifts are that maybe have nothing to do with Capricorn. And maybe the Capricorn is a blockage. And I have found this. I have a client who is so blocked by their Capricorn moon that they don't get a free flow of emotion. Everything seems dry and not yummy. And, it can be very complicated. So that's, you want to have that checked out and understand why that's the issue.
Got it. Okay, I'm so excited to ask this question. Okay, the question is, I know numbers have meaning, and I see 1111 all the time. What is its significance? Okay,
very good question. First of all, you need to understand that numbers are literally the building blocks of the universe. They're powerful,
right, and
they have frequency and vibration. 1111 typically means you as an individual are working on your mastery, and that is a significant moment in time where through your thoughts you might be able to manifest things more quickly. Through your thoughts, through your words, or through your visualization. Okay? So when you see that 1111, instead of going, oh my gosh, I'm seeing it again, immediately go into what I want to be and visualize what you want to be or what you want to manifest. Use that moment in time of higher frequency to help you get where you want to go.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So it is that whole thing like Make-A-Wish. It is that, but it's so much more than that.
Oh, so much more. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's also helpful for people to know that that's how spirit works with us. That's how the universe works with us. It's called synchronicity. When it's trying to get a message to us, it keeps knocking at our door, And if we're one of those people that isn't paying attention, sometimes you need a 2x4 over the head before you pay attention. And that's happened to me in the past. So
right,
pay attention to that and thank the universe for giving you that message that you are connected, you're being worked with, and then start using it to your advantage.
I love that. Okay, so there were a few questions that were posted that were kind of with the undertone that you are a psychic. And someone asked, when will I get my health under control? And
well, I'm not psychic, okay? And there are people who are, and those are typically Cancers, Pisces, or Scorpios. But I do and have honed my intuition where I can get information that way. And usually your gut sense or your intuition is 95% accurate. So if people who aren't, those water signs will follow their gut and follow their impression, they're going to be 95% accurate. However, you can learn it. It's a skill, and you just have to work with it to create that ability. And I have worked with it, but I use astrology as the kickoff point. Okay, because astrology sets in motion the cycles that we go through for our evolution. And depending on your chart and where, say, Pluto or Saturn falls in your chart is going to tell you what issues you're going to be dealing with. And if Saturn is in the 6th house, it could very well have to do with health, but we're not going to know that. Or Saturn could be in the 6th house by transit. which has to do with your health and difficulty with health. And once I see the chart, then I will be able to tell you how long it's going to be there, or if it's a lifetime thing, and what the person then needs to do. And a lot of times it has to do with fear. People need to understand that when you are in a fearful mental state, which is very low frequency, okay, that is the frequency of the disease or the illness. Illness is low frequency. So when you're in fear that, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this, or I've got cancer or whatever, you're opening up your frequency, your body, your energy to the frequency of that disease. So you got to stay happy. You got to stay in gratitude. Even if you've got an issue, a health issue here or there, the way you overcome it is laughter, high frequency stuff, and stay out of fear. Fear is the most damaging of all the emotions that we have.
Right. I'm loving it because as I'm reading through these questions, I think everyone who's probably submitted this question realizes, like someone says, do you see me and my boyfriend of almost 11 years getting married? I'm having a hard time with my career. I'd love to hear your thoughts and insight. All these questions that people have can be answered, not just quickly, like in an in-depth natal chart reading that will not only answer these questions, but in-depth, like it's so powerful. So, I mean, anyone who submitted a question like that, I would just tell you, and by the way, my aunt is offering 30% off of her readings, so I'm super excited to give you guys the code for that. You can utilize that. But it sounds like that's kind of what you're saying, Wendy, is like you can actually get answers to these questions. You can get guidance on these issues.
You know, on a relationship, once I see the person's chart and then the lover's chart, I can tell instantly if they're compatible and if there's going to be longevity associated with the relationship. So that's something that can be seen rather quickly. And
Wendy, ironically enough, my boyfriend Mike just walked in the house.
Did he?
Oh, with Susie. Mike, what's your sign? Mike's a Taurus. Can you do a reading on this sometime?
Yes.
Do you think are Libras and Tauruses compatible?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Is they're both ruled by Venus. So.
We're ruled by Venus.
But you know, I've got to see all of his stuff compared to your stuff, and then I can give you a more accurate answer. But the person that was talking about the career, I think that's an important question, because if you are doing something that you dislike and it is not moving forward the way you would like, there's a reason for that, because it maybe isn't the right direction for you. If you're doing something that you dislike and you're doing it because, you know, mom and dad told me I had to be responsible, so I have to take this job and I have to do, you know, all of this stuff that I hate, you know, you're screwing yourself when you do that. The correct path is joy. When whatever it is that brings you joy, then that's what you need to be doing. And if you're doing the wrong thing, then you need to quit it. And sometimes that takes keeping one foot in the work world where you are and another foot learning the new things, which is what I did for a period of time. I was actually an interior designer when I started learning astrology. And then when you're ready, you can let go of what isn't your path and work completely with your path. And the joy is what you came here to do. You're completing your life mission if you immerse yourself in what brings you joy. Okay? So people ask me all the time, what's my life purpose? Well, what do you want it to be? Experiment, try things, and do what brings you joy. Then you know you're on the right path. Yeah, that's the measuring stick.
That's so beautiful.
But now, in a transit reading, okay, which is where the planets are today in combination with your natal chart, I can tell from that and from solar returns if you're what's going on with your job, you know, what's going on with your relationship. I can see divorces in it. I can see child getting pregnant and childbirth in it. I can see, you know, just all kinds of things with career and family. And so, you know, It's very helpful to know. I had one lady, I told her that she was going to come into money and that she was going to change careers. And she just laughed at me. She thought I was just crazy. Well, it was a couple years, 3 years later, that she contacted me again for reading. She says, I just got to tell you. She said, I thought you were just wacko. But she said, my father died. He left me a bunch of money. I quit my job and went to school for interior design. But
Well, what do you know?
But back when I told her that, she couldn't see it, so she didn't believe it. But I'm of the philosophy, you believe it, and then you'll see it.
I love that.
Which is opposite.
Yes, it is. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, one of the last questions I thought was really beautiful. And this is, I'm interested to hear your answer because I know that you've had to do a lot of forgiving in your life. How do you know if you've forgiven someone? I have forgiven my mom a bazillion times, but she keeps saying things that hurt, and I feel angry all over again. It feels like starting over with forgiveness. I want to let go of it all and all of the negativity.
Well, there are a couple of issues here that are important to discuss. Number one, we as a society place way too much importance on what our parents or other people think of us. That's what creates a lot of the difficulty for people. It's that they're so connected to other people's opinions. And when you can let go of that and not care, I love this one lady, and I can't remember her name, who coined this phrase. It was, what other people think of me is none of my business. And
that's Byron Katie.
Yeah, and I love it. That is such an important concept for all of us to integrate. Now, the other issue is you will know when you have forgiven, and this is the issue. The problem is your response to your mother. It's not that she did something that is like totally out of the blue. It's your response to it. And you have created a response pattern that keeps you in that loop thinking, well, you've got to forgive your mother. No. You've got to work on yourself and how you respond to your mother, because you will never change your mother. And your mother could be doing stupid, wacky things to you for the rest of your existence. And so what you want to do is reach a point with your responses where your mother is no longer a trigger. You have no emotional trigger to what she says anymore at all.
It's like you've taken the money method. Can you guys all tell that we're related? I love it. It's so beautiful to hear you say all this, and you're totally 100% right. I love that.
I had to go through that. I had to go through that with my own mother.
I know.
And
I know you.
So I worked through it and changed how I respond to issues with her and with my family and my early upbringing and belief systems and all of that stuff.
I love that. That was beautiful. Last question is, my sun sign is Scorpio. What determines your moon and rising sign?
The time of your birth. That's why it's so important to get an accurate birth time, because from that, it sets everything else in its place. It sets the planets in the correct houses, which gives you what you're going to be working on in this life. So say your moon is in the 5th house, and if you had the wrong birth time and it put it in the 7th house, the definition of that will be entirely different. And I always know when somebody gives me an incorrect time, because when I start the reading and I start saying, okay, this is the situation. Can you relate to that? And they go, no. And so I'll ask them another question. I'll say, can you relate to that? And they'll say, no. And I said, okay, where did you get that birth time?
Yeah.
And then...
Well, and that's I think that would be my next question. So I'm sure everyone's going to want to make an appointment with you. Where is that information, posted? Where do you find that?
Well, the most accurate place would be a birth certificate. And if you can get it on your birth certificate, the other then would be the mother or family members. And I don't remember. what time my kids were born. I mean, I was in such...
I'm sitting there going, should I know that?
I know. So it's a matter of somebody making a record of that. And you know how you and I were raised, Michelle, we had baby books for each one of our children, right?
Right.
And we entered all the time and data, and that was part of being, you know, the good mom, is you had this, you know, complete baby book of all this stuff. But, you know, search for the accurate time, because that is the only way that I can give you a full-fledged accurate reading. You know, I can give you...
So let me ask you this. If you're off like a few minutes, does it change your reading that much?
It can. It doesn't have to. And the reason why is the rising sign changes every 2.5 hours. Okay? The moon changes signs every 2.5 days. And so, yes, on the average, and some signs are a little shorter than others, but the rising sign changes. So if, say, you have given me an incorrect birth time that's 29 degrees Scorpio, which is 2 degrees from the next sign, which is Sagittarius, and we know that you can't find your accurate time, then I have to go through a process of rectification and ask you specific questions to see whether you have a Scorpio rising or whether you have a Sagittarius rising, because it's so close to the cusp.
Wow.
So yeah, it requires some work to identify it, but it works. You know, we can do it through rectification, but the best and always the most accurate is the birth certificate.
Jessica has an interesting question, and I'd like to know the answer too. She said, would you be able to tell me if my daughter's father will ever walk into her life and disrupt it using their sign? He's been absent her whole life. I'm terrified of this. Is that something you can see?
Yes.
In a reading?
But I would need to see both charts, the father's and the child's, and oftentimes the mother's is helpful too, because what we find out with families is that there's a particular sign or two that ties them together. And once I know what, you know, the proclivities basically of the father are and what his tendencies are, then I will be able to tell, you know, if he's a liar, you know, or if he is sincere, or, you know, I can tell all those things.
Jessica says, how do I get his chart? And I think what Wendy means is you just need his birth date, time, and place, right?
Right. And again, the more accurate the time, the better.
Yeah. What about twins born just a couple of minutes apart? Can they be different because of those couple of minutes?
Yes, and let me tell you how that works. When the twins are together, they share the chart in a way that one of them behaves in a way that is contrary to the other chart or to the other person. And so while they're together, they are operating on two different aspects of the same chart. And it's a phenomenon that's really fascinating, because when they grow up and they leave the presence of each other, then they start manifesting the full chart and not just half the chart.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So that's why twins can be so different.
Wendy, where do people find more about you and what you do? What's your web address and your socials? How do people... TwixtEarthAndSky.com is my... And I posted a link in the event so that you guys know, like, that's where you go to see all everything she offers and more about her. So I'll actually
and all about astrology and Reiki and, you know, all that stuff is on that site. Twixt, Twixt, Earth, and AndSky.com. And I also have my blog where I've done a lot of writing, and I explain children's astrology and all of that stuff and what's going on in the world, and that's wendycicchetti.com.